August 18, 1590. Governor John White steps onto Roanoke Island after 3 agonizing years away. He expects to find 115 English settlers, including his daughter and granddaughter. Instead of a thriving colony, he finds a terrifying, absolute silence. No bodies, no blood. The wooden palisade stands completely deserted. 115 human beings have evaporated into thin air. The only clue left behind? A single word, Croatoan, deeply carved into a wooden post. No Maltese cross, the agreed-upon distress signal, is anywhere to be found. This isn't a ghost story. The Roanoke disappearance is a chilling collision of global geopolitics, a catastrophic 800-year climate anomaly, and the brutal reality of 16th century indigenous survival. Let's rewind. July 22, 1587. Sponsored by Sir Walter Raleigh, 115 idealistic English settlers drop anchor at Roanoke Island off the dangerous coast of modern-day North Carolina. Unlike military outposts, this is a civilian corporate venture. The manifest lists 89 men, 17 women, and 11 children. They are farmers, artisans, and families seeking a permanent New World home. Among them is Eleanor Dare, Governor White's pregnant daughter. On August 18, 1587, she gives birth to Virginia Dare, the very first English child born in the Americas. But their timing is a death sentence. Arriving in late July means they completely miss the spring planting season. The 115 colonists have virtually no winter food reserves. Furthermore, they inherit a toxic diplomatic nightmare. Previous English military expeditions in 1585 had murdered a local Croatoan chief. Chief Wanchese now views these new settlers as hostile invaders. Within a mere 30 days, desperation sets in. Rations dwindle rapidly. Indigenous tribes refuse to trade their scarce corn. The Roanoke colony is effectively isolated and starving. The 115 colonists draft an urgent petition. They beg their leader, 45-year-old Governor John White, to make the treacherous 3,000-mile voyage back to London to secure emergency relief supplies. White is terrified to leave his newborn granddaughter. But on August 27, 1587, he boards a ship bound for England, promising to return with heavy cargo ships in 6 months. His transatlantic journey is brutal, plagued by storms and injuries. White finally staggers into London in November 1587, ready to quickly load relief ships and race back to Roanoke. But John White has sailed directly into a geopolitical trap. Queen Elizabeth I is facing the greatest existential threat in English history. The massive Spanish Armada is mobilizing. By 1588, the Queen issues a strict embargo. Every single English ship is seized for national defense. White is trapped in London, while his family starves 3,000 miles away. As 1588 drags on, the 115 colonists are effectively abandoned. Back in London, John White refuses to give up. In April, he manages to secure 2 small, poorly armed ships. But disaster strikes immediately. French pirates intercept White's vessels. After a bloody skirmish, White is severely wounded, his supplies are looted, and he is forced to limp back to England. Meanwhile, on Roanoke, the horizon remains agonizingly empty. The colonists are trapped. Do they stay and starve, waiting for a rescue that might never come? Or do they move? Back in Europe, the Spanish Armada is famously defeated in late 1588. But the Anglo-Spanish War rages on. Privateering, legalized piracy against Spanish gold, becomes England's absolute obsession. Even Sir Walter Raleigh, the colony's original sponsor, loses interest. In 1589, Raleigh essentially assigns his Roanoke rights to a merchant consortium, cutting off crucial financial backing. Governor White is completely isolated. The entire year of 1589 passes in agonizing silence. No ships, no funding, and no word from his daughter Eleanor or granddaughter Virginia. Finally, in early 1590, a desperate White strikes a deal with John Watts, a wealthy privateer. Watts agrees to take White to the Americas, but there is a cruel catch. White is allowed on board only as a mere passenger. He is strictly forbidden from bringing any relief supplies, new colonists, or food for the starving Roanoke settlement. On March 20th, 1590, White finally departs. But this isn't a rescue mission. The privateers spend 5 agonizing months raiding Spanish outposts in the Caribbean, treating White as an afterthought. Every detour is torture for White. It isn't until mid-August, exactly coinciding with Virginia Dare's 3rd birthday, that the privateers finally sail northward towards the treacherous Outer Banks. August 15, 1590. As the ships anchor at Hatteras Island, White spots a massive plume of smoke rising from the direction of Roanoke. His heart surges with unbelievable hope. Had they survived? Have they been keeping a signal fire burning for 3 full years? The privateers agree to take small rowboats through the treacherous shoals to investigate. But a sudden violent squall traps them offshore for 2 agonizing days. 7 sailors drown when a rowboat capsizes. Nature itself seems determined to keep White from the island. On the night of August 17, the weather clears. White and a search party row towards Roanoke in pitch darkness, the tension almost unbearable. As they approach the shore, White commands his men to sing familiar English folk songs at the top of their lungs, hoping to prevent friendly fire. But only the wind answers. Morning finally breaks on August 18, 1590, what should have been Virginia Dare's 3rd birthday. White steps onto the island. The smoke they saw was just a natural forest fire. He rushes toward the settlement, expecting a warm embrace. Instead, he finds a ghost town. The area is completely stripped. There is no one. 115 people are gone. But as a leader, White's mind switches to forensic analysis. If they were massacred by a hostile tribe or Spanish soldiers, where are the bodies? There are 0 graves, 0 bones, and 0 blood. Walking the perimeter, the search party finds their first clue. A large tree has had its bark stripped away. Carved deep into the raw wood are 3 letters: C-R-O. But then, at the main entrance of the defensive palisade, they find the definitive message. One of the heavy wooden posts bears a single capitalized word: Croatoan. White immediately drops to his knees. He isn't just looking at the letters. He is desperately searching every inch of that wooden post for one specific symbol. Before leaving in 1587, White established a strict protocol. If the colonists were forced to relocate, they must carve their destination. But if they were under attack or in acute distress, they were to carve a Maltese cross above the destination name. White stares at the post. There is no cross. They left voluntarily. This was an organized evacuation, not a panicked flight. Further evidence confirms this. The colonists' houses haven't been burned or destroyed by natives. They have been systematically dismantled. The heavy wooden beams were carefully taken down to be reused. They couldn't take everything. Heavy iron pigs and cannons are found overgrown with weeds. And in a nearby trench, White spots 5 large wooden chests that had been buried. To his horror, 3 of those chests are his own personal property, hidden before he left in 1587. Local tribes had dug them up, ruining his priceless books, maps, and armor. Despite the ruined cargo, White is euphoric. Croatoan is not a cryptic riddle. It is an island just 50 miles south. More importantly, it is the home of Chief Manteo, their greatest indigenous ally. They hadn't vanished into thin air. They simply moved in with Manio's tribe to survive. White immediately orders the privateer captains to weigh anchor and sail south to Croatoan Island. But nature refuses to yield. Just as they prepare to depart, a massive late summer hurricane slams into the Outer Banks. The anchor cables on the ships brutally snap. Blown dangerously out to sea, low on food, and facing a mutinous crew, the privateers refuse to stay. John White is forced back to England. he will never see his family again. For 400 years, the Roanoke disappearance remained an unsolved mystery. But in 1998, climatologists from the University of Arkansas unlocked the truth. Not with shovels, but with trees. Using Dendrochronology, the scientific study of tree rings, researchers analyzed ancient bald cypress trees native to the Roanoke area, some of which were over 800 years old. Tree rings record rainfall. Thick rings mean heavy rain. Thin rings mean drought. When scientists looked at the rings corresponding to the years 1587 to 1589, they were stunned. The Roanoke colonists had accidentally landed during the most extreme, severe megadrought the North American climate had seen in exactly 800 years. This ecological collapse meant instant death. English seeds, planted late in dry, cracked earth, withered immediately. Fresh water streams completely evaporated. The colonists were starving. Crucially, the megadrought destroyed indigenous agriculture, too. Chief Wanchese and the local Secatan tribes barely had enough corn to feed their own families. When the starving English tried to trade copper and coins for food, they were flatly rejected. You cannot eat money. The tension escalated from diplomatic to a brutal battle for calories. Trapped on Roanoke Island with no food, no fresh water, and hostile warriors surrounding the woods, the 115 colonists realized their settlement wasn't a fort anymore. It was a tomb. They had only one lifeline, Chief Manteo. Unlike Wanchese, Manteo had traveled to England, spoke English, and viewed the colonists as allies. He offered them an unthinkable alternative: assimilation. If they abandoned their European identity, their heavy armor, and their feudal farming, they could join the Croatoan tribe. They would become hunter-gatherers to survive the drought. This completely explains the pristine crime scene White found. It wasn't a frantic escape. The 115 colonists systematically disassembled their houses to build small boats and temporary shelters. They buried anything too heavy to carry or useless in a hunter-gatherer society. John White's books, iron cannons, and excess armor. They were stripping down for raw survival. Before leaving, they fulfilled White's protocol. A colonist took a knife and carved their destination into the palisade post. Croatoan, the island of Chief Manteo, and they deliberately left off the Maltese cross. They were not under attack. They were willingly marching 50 miles south to join their friends. It was a calculated evacuation. In late 1587, the 115 men, women, and children walked out of the wooden gates, disappearing into the vast American wilderness, choosing life as natives over death as Englishmen. Modern science backs this up. In 2012, researchers at the British Museum re-examined Governor John White's original 1585 watercolor map of the region, using modern imaging technology. Underneath a small paper patch that had been glued over the map for 400 years, they found a hidden symbol, a four-pointed star representing a hidden inland fort. They dubbed this location Site X, sitting 50 miles inland at Albemarle Sound. The 115 colonists likely split up to increase their odds of survival, scattering into smaller groups. Between 2015 and 2020, archaeologists from the First Colony Foundation excavated Site X. Buried in the dirt, they found definitive proof: 16th century English civilian artifacts. They unearthed Surrey, Hampshire borderware pottery. This specific type of pottery was not used by later wealthy military expeditions. It was cheap, domestic ware used exclusively by everyday farming families, like the 1587 colonists. Simultaneously, excavations 50 miles south on Hatteras Island, the historic Croatoan territory, yielded identical results. They found English copper rings, 16th century iron rapier hilts, and gun locks. These weren't war trophies. They were heavily used, repurposed tools. The English weren't just visiting, they were living there, sharing metallurgy with their native hosts. Fast forward a century to 1709. English explorer John Lawson ventures into this exact region. What he records in his journal is the ultimate proof of assimilation. Lawson encounters the Hatteras Indians, descendants of the Croatoan. He notes with utter shock that many of them possess striking gray eyes, fair skin, and light hair. Genetic impossibilities for pure Native Americans. Even today, the modern Lumbee tribe of North Carolina carries oral traditions of absorbing English settlers. Decades of genealogical research show their surnames, like Dare, White, and Sampson, perfectly match the 1587 Roanoke Manifest. Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas, didn't vanish into a magical void. She grew up. She learned the Algonquian language. She survived. Not as an Englishwoman, but as an American. This is the tragic yet beautiful irony of Governor John White. By failing to return with ships and European supplies in 1588, he forced his family to adapt. His failure is exactly what saved their lives. For centuries, we treated Croatoan as a creepy epitaph, an unsolved ghost story. But we were wrong. It wasn't a mystery, it was an instruction. It was a forward-looking signpost. The 115 souls of Roanoke did not disappear. Confronted by war, abandonment, and the worst drought in 800 years, they did the most human thing possible. They adapted. They merged. They lived. The lost colony was never lost. We just didn't know how to look for them. Thank you for watching, and stay curious.